Welcome in to the Grown Man's Podcast, where you can get all your fantasy news, NFL news, and even something special this week. A little interview with a previous NFL scout, Daniel Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he'll be on a little bit later in the show. But as always, across from me, the other host of the Grown Man's Podcast, T-Bone. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right, I like it.
Great. Beautiful summer day out today. Had a nice, casual, leisurely work day today.
97 out today.
It was hot out today. But I spent most of my day inside of an air-conditioned car, so that's all right.
That's true.
And I got no work tomorrow. Took the day off. I got to do some chicken butchering tomorrow, Hattie. Yeah.
It's not really what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear, like, golfing and stuff. But,
well, I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows?
It's possible. It depends on how quick. I'll tell you what. It'll go quicker than it normally does because I just got a new chicken plucker.
Oh.
Yeah. So
goes even quicker for you.
It's like a big washing machine that you use. You throw your chicken in and it takes all the feathers off.
It sounds so morbid.
Yeah.
But I like it.
It looks morbid when it's going. If you don't know what it is, look it up a YouTube video of it. It's a pretty violent feather extraction process, but you know what? It's an effective and quick feather extraction process.
Yes.
Hattie, talking about dead things, you're trying to kill this fruit fly here that's been absolutely driving you crazy.
Yep, there's 2 fruit flies in the house.
Unsuccessfully so.
I killed one before the podcast. The other one's still buzzing around here somewhere.
It's like the Maverick of it's the Top Gun of the fruit fly world.
Yeah?
Yeah.
For sure?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get out, do anything fun this weekend?
Did I get out and do anything fun this weekend?
No golfing this weekend.
You know what? I did go golfing with Rick.
Friday.
When was that? Was that Friday?
I think it was Friday.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, me and Rick went golfing. You know what happened? I threw my back out this weekend. And my wife seems to think that it was me playing golf. I told her it wasn't.
Not golf.
Couldn't possibly be,
Couldn't
right?
possibly be golf that throws your back out.
But yeah, my back, I was supposed to get stuff done around the house this weekend. I was supposed to build a new swing set on my kid's play set in the backyard and change my wife's brakes and, all kinds of nonsense around the house. Got none of it done because my back was hurting. So, what about you? Did you do anything fun?
I know I went golfing whatever day that you did.
Friday.
Just different spots. That one's been Friday. We went up to see the gardens.
What gardens?
In Ithaca in Cornell.
Oh, they got gardens?
Yeah, they have like 5 or 6 gardens that are up there. They're real pretty. We walked through them.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
Yeah.
My wife wanted to go and see it. So.
How much of a walk was that?
A few miles.
Yeah.
Like depending on how many of them do you do. There's like 4 or 5 gardens. Like
That's
so
cool.
it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These fruit flies are multiplying, Hattie.
It's
a real problem. It's a real problem.
It's our problem in where we live during the summertime.
I think it's a problem everywhere in the summertime. Fruit flies.
Is.
Especially when you constantly have a bowl of fruit sitting on the table full of shiny apples, lemons, and limes.
They didn't come from that fruit.
And oranges.
That was clean fruit.
I mean, fruit flies come from somewhere.
That's true.
I don't know where.
Probably fruit.
Oh, most assuredly.
You could probably bring them in on your fruit.
Yeah.
Because they're probably just like
little
eggs or something on your
like
fruit.
Little microscopic eggs. Because fruit flies, even at full grown size, not that big.
Not that big.
Not that big at all.
Have you ever seen the videos on the strawberries?
No.
Where there's like little bugs that can get into strawberries.
No.
They're not going to hurt you even if you eat them.
Yeah.
But they're just kind of like gross if you've ever seen them.
No, I haven't seen those. But I used to eat a lot of sunflower seeds when I used to work at an office job.
Oh, boy.
And apparently there are little parasites that will get into your sunflower seeds. And so you got to be really careful and look for them. There's like a little pinhole in a sunflower seed, and if there's a pinhole, it means that it's a bad seed. There's a bug inside of it. It's dead now because they roast the sunflower seeds and stuff.
Right.
But it'll be a really gross, it'll be like gritty and like real off-tasting if you accidentally eat one.
I never knew this.
And I didn't either until I was eating a crap ton of sunflower seeds. It's like, things that come from the outside, they do the best they can, but at the end of the day, you're going to be eating some bugs.
Especially with something like a sunflower seed's got a seed down there.
Yeah.
So if anything gets in there, even if it goes through the manufacturing and stuff, it still could be inside.
There's nothing they can do about that.
Nothing they can do.
And you know what? You shouldn't expect them to.
Hey, I'll tell you, when it comes to like weird things and like gritty stuff, you sometimes just got to like... It's salty and flavored enough where you don't really tell it's in there.
It's better to not know, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just like when you get like a scallop or even a shrimp.
Yeah.
And it's like real, like you ever had a real sandy, gritty scallop?
I don't eat any of those kinds of seafood.
You never eaten any scallops?
I've never eaten a scallop or what's the other ones that are
shrimp?
I don't eat shrimp. What's the other ones that are like scallops though? They come in a half shell.
Clams, oysters.
Oysters. Yeah, I don't eat those either.
Oysters are gross.
Yeah.
I think I've told my story of
They look like
oysters
snot.
on the podcast.
I don't
once.
think you have. I don't know.
I think I did.
What was
we
it?
went to Ireland. I've never really had oysters, so we went to like one of the most renowned restaurants in Ireland for oysters, and we bought like a whole thing, and I had one of them. It was absolutely disgusting. And I was like, man, I paid good money for these.
They look so gross.
But it's not for me.
Yeah.
I can do clams.
Yeah.
Like grilled clams
Yeah.
with some butter. I can do those, like cooked.
Mm-hmm.
But oysters are, in their traditional sense, are served open with like snot, seawater,
Yeah,
and I'm
that's-
gross.
Is a
not
general
for me.
rule, if it lives in the water and it's not a fish, I don't eat it. I will eat fish. I started eating fish maybe 10 years ago. I never used to eat fish. But yeah, all the other things that are living in the water that are not fish, I don't eat.
Oh man, scallops and shrimp are great.
Or octopus or whatever it is. What is it? The calamari?
Calamari.
I don't eat that crap either.
Oh man, I love calamari. Some good grilled calamari is amazing.
The only chance that I would ever have of eating calamari is if it was like fried calamari.
All right.
And even then,
You like dip it in the
I got it
sauce
and it got away. I caught the fruit fly in my hand and it got away.
in
I didn't
between your
squeeze it hard
fingers.
enough.
It's got
Oh,
little
man,
cracks
yeah.
of your fingers.
That one.
I will say.
Yeah.
What about eel? Did you eat eel?
I had eel in sushi one time,
Oh, that's
and
great.
it was the most rubbery, disgusting thing ever.
Oh, it was bad eel then.
Yeah.
That's the thing with avec and calamari in particular. Like
Gotta be done right.
it's got to be done right, or
Yeah.
it gets real rubbery.
I've heard that about calamari. You either got to cook it like flash cook calamari, or you got to cook it for like hours. Because if you cook it in between, it gets tough and rubbery, and there's like a sweet spot right when you first start cooking it, and right when you're cooked it for a long time, where it's a real good spot to eat them.
Nobody wants to be eating a rubber band.
No,
Nope.
I don't want anything to do with it, Hattie. Nope.
But if you got this far,
Yeah.
you're listening to the Grown Man's Podcast.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you for joining in. I'd like to thank our regulars, those who support us, and our grown men on Patreon. And if you would like to become a grown man, you can do so on patreon.com/grownmanspodcast, on Instagram at grownmanspodcast. And if you just do like to communicate with us, ask us questions for the show, give us your feedback, you can do so on Twitter. That's the thing that we check the most and are most active on. And you can do so at grownmanspod, at grownmanspod on Twitter.
Yep.
What do you say we get this podcast kicked off and rolling?
Yeah, for sure. But I will say, we haven't said this in a long time, but if you become a Patreon supporter, we will send you out some stickers.
Oh, yeah.
We got Grown Man Podcast stickers. You can stick them,
Wherever stickers are stuck.
on your laptop or your car. Where else can you stick a sticker, Hattie? On your water bottle.
Literally anywhere.
You can stick it on your boss's face.
On your luggage.
You can. Oh yeah, that'd be a great way to tell your luggage from everybody else's luggage.
Yep, with a nice Grown Man's Podcast sticker
right.
on it.
Yep. And I think you know what? To be perfectly honest with you, I think Gus did put a Grown Man's Podcast sticker because when he became a Patreon supporter, we sent him out 5 or 6 stickers, I think, and I think he did stick one on his luggage.
It's the best place to put it.
If my memory serves me correctly.
As long as you don't got like some Louis Vuitton luggage or something real expensive, you don't want to mar that
Yeah.
up. But if you're in normal luggage like us normal folk, then
Yes.
put a sticker on that bad boy.
Although there's probably not a lot of Gus isn't doing a lot of traveling right now because of the pandemic.
I don't think anybody's doing a lot of
He's a
traveling
responsible guy with the pandemic. He doesn't appreciate all the nonsense with sports being played and stuff. In the midst of the pandemic, he's not an advocate for it. I disagree with him on it, but that's okay. You could have a disagreement and still like a guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Me and you disagree on lots of things all the
yeah.
time.
I'd say
We're still buds.
We might disagree on more stuff than we agree on, Hattie.
That might be true.
That's very
That's very
possible.
possible. That might be
Yep.
true.
So we can all just come together and just realize that we all have different opinions and embrace it.
Yep.
Yep. And
But
fight
you-
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good fight's good once in
Yeah,
a
a
while.
little hearty debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
As long as it's friendly.
Yep.
And you can walk away disagreeing and still like each other.
Absolutely.
Go play a round of golf,
Oh, I'd love to do
which
that.
needs to happen this
Yeah.
Friday.
Well, as soon as my back gets to feeling better.
You take a couple ibuprofens.
I take a couple ibuprofens just as a preventative measure nowadays. It's been getting bad, Hattie. The years are going on here, and my body isn't holding up as good as yours is.
Time to talk to the old doctor. Get some stronger pills.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna need some Vicodins.
I mean,
Give me some oxycodones?
whatever the doctor will give you for back problems.
Hey, I'd love it. Bring it on.
Yeah.
I could get a nice opioid addiction going on here.
No addiction. We're not going to
Oh,
promote
no
that
addiction.
at all.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Like only for pain management that you absolutely need.
Yeah. I'm down with that.
Yeah, let's go right into the news.
Okay.
And since you have double the news of me, why don't we start off with you?
All right.
We're all double lightning round over there.
Ba-da-ba-bum-bum-bum-bum-ba-da. NFL news.
I was wondering if we're going to get away from that this week.
Especially when you let me go first, Hattie.
I know, it's a big mistake.
It is a huge mistake, Hattie, because then I get to get it in there. Yeah, Wes, are you ever going to get that news drop to us? I know we asked him about it.
I know.
What a grown man Wes is, by the way.
I know. He's a good road man.
Great guy.
He's probably spending time with his girlfriend and stuff these days and not making music for
What
the
a waste of time.
best podcast in the world, the Grown Man's Podcast.
I mean, hey, it is a podcast in the world.
I mean, it's a podcast.
Oh, it's definitely
It's
a podcast.
definitely a top 500 in our category.
No, I think it was top 120 or something.
I think
like
it was
that.
top 120. I didn't want to be like,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure of the exact number and didn't want to overstate it. So
It's around top 100.
guaranteed top 500 though.
Definitely-
Guaranteed top
it's
200.
top 200.
Yep.
Top 150 even, I think.
I think it is. I think we got to I think we got in the top
I mean, we don't want to brag or anything.
single
but-
digit 100s at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not single digit, 2 digit.
Single digit 100s. We got to like
Less than
109 or 108.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So first things I have up here on my docket are
Your yellow sketch pad.
Oh yeah, my legal pad. I love a legal pad. I noticed that you have a little notebook.
Mm-hmm.
I always go with the legal pad.
You know-
there's so much room.
I've never used a legal pad.
No?
I don't think I've ever used one in my life.
You got to try it. It's a wonderful amount of space.
I like the little notebooks.
I see that. You are a small writer.
I am
You
very
write
small.
Very
writer.
small.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't. And you know what I like to do? I like to sketch a lot. While I'm sitting here, doing stuff, I doodle a lot.
I have an uncreative mind.
Yeah.
When
You're
it
not a
comes to
doodler?
sketching. No, I'm not a doodler.
Oh man, I will doodle all day long. All right. Anyway, first thing I have up here: rosters need to be cut to 80 players by the start of training camp. So a lot of teams are already preemptively doing that because I guess you can have 90 players on the roster, but you can't have more than 80 in the building at one time. So you'd have to have 2 separate practices.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they're just essentially just saying, well, we're just going to make it an 80-person roster so we don't have to do 2 practices.
Makes sense.
So a lot of teams are already starting to cut down their training camp rosters.
Yep.
And the next item I have up here is Woody Johnson, owner of the New York Jets, has been accused of racist and sexist things, as well as the abuse of power in his position as United States ambassador to the United Kingdom. So, he's come out and adamantly denied that. I know a lot of Jets fans are anxious, hoping that he will be forced into selling the team. But that would be too nice of a thing, and Jets fans can't have anything nice. So there's a 0% chance that that's going to happen, so stop wishing for it, because the more you wish for it, the more it's not going to happen.
Most likely they'll do an investigation, and he'll be the biggest saint of a person you ever could imagine.
Could be.
And just keep on owning the Jets and running them into the ground.
That's probably, that would be my luck. So yes, at this point, nothing is coming of it, but not a good look for the Jets.
All right. My first one is Raheem Mostert. We were talking about him last week or 2 weeks ago about requesting a trade. Mm-hmm. He's actually signed a new deal. It's no years added onto the contract. It's just a little bit more money. It's incentive laden. Mm-hmm. He can earn a little over $5 million per year on his current deal. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that happens. Incentive laden with Tevin Coleman in your backfield and Matt Breida. No,
Breida.
Matt Breida?
Yeah, Breida.
Is he still there? Or did he get traded? Because I know they signed Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think Matt's still there. I'm just going to leave his last name off.
Matt Breida.
Go with Matt.
It's Breida.
Like a burrito?
But I
burrito?
will say, in regards to, who was it, Tevin Coleman?
Yeah.
That he was shorted by just, I think, a couple yards on an incentive, like a rushing yards incentive from last season, where that he just barely missed it, and he would have gotten an extra $250,000 pay bump for that. And so the team decided that they wanted to make sure that he got that money, even though technically he missed it. He essentially hit it, so that's why they gave him a $250,000 signing bonus with this new contract update or whatever it was that they did to make sure that he got that money for it. I thought that was a good thing, a little bit of an upstanding thing for the organization to do, keep him happy.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I know the Eagles did that with, I believe it was Nick Foles in one of the years that he played. Like he had, I believe the Super Bowl year or the year after.
Yeah.
He just missed out on like a big incentive, and they gave it to him anyway. It's always a good look. Like if you miss it by such a little margin, but you've done your team well, why not give them a little extra money? I mean, it doesn't really matter in the
especially
grand
if you're a
scheme
Super
of
Bowl MVP for the team.
Yeah.
And won them their first Super Bowl ever. I'd say definitely pay them that
I'd say
situation.
definitely give them a little incentive.
Yep. All right, next item up here. Antonio Brown has been asking for the NFL to wrap up his investigation and, figure out exactly what they're going to do with him because he wants to come back out of retirement again. So, the AB saga seems to be never ending. I mean, it's just him trying to stay relevant, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always been the case.
That or he's just actually that insane and he thinks, that he's going to retire, that he's not going to retire, and
I think he's just keeping his name in the news at this point, and it doesn't matter what. He just wants to, if he does want to get on another NFL team and people are talking about him, there's going to be demand for a player of his talent. And, I mean, athletes kind of are celebrities these days, and he is a celebrity. A lot of people follow him, and, I mean, we talk about him a lot. I mean, like, we give him news, so.
Yeah, I suppose. Give him a little bit of pop.
A little bit of pop.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Yep, so he's apparently coming back out of retirement and trying to get back onto a team again. Big surprise.
Right.
Am I going twice here? All right. Next one up here, the cap for the NFL. The why am I drawing a blank here? The cap. The
salary cap?
Salary cap. Thank you. That will be declining, so it can't go lower than $175 million per team. But because of the lost revenue from all this COVID stuff and the extra expenses and all that kind of stuff that goes into making this season happen, there's going to be less revenue than what there should have been or would have been without that happening. So the salary cap is, unable to drop below $175 million per year. In 2020, it's $198 million. Okay. So in order to recoup the differences, they're going to be dropping down to that floor of $175 million, presumably, for the 2022 to the 2024 seasons. So, the thought that the cap goes up every year, that is not going to be happening necessarily, or probably even for the next 2 to 3 years, just because of all this stuff that's going on right now. So,
for sure.
So things like the Mahomes, all these mega deals that may have happened, you could find yourself in a bit of a precarious situation, not being able to sign other players that you want to be able to sign.
I think the Mahomes deal was still good, even if the cap does go down.
I do too.
But I think this hurts people like Dak Prescott trying to get it
big time,
because the whole reason he wanted to sign a short contract is because he wanted to get on a TV deal when they re-signed that. I believe that's 2022 or after the 2021 season. I believe is when they re-up, and everyone expects after that goes through, salary cap's going up. Salary cap has been going up for like 14 straight years, which is also unheard of. But now with this,
it's going down, maybe.
I mean, it's going to affect the league. If revenue is not there, salary cap's going down. So it's going to affect. I mean, it's going to affect his contract. At some point, it's going to.
Yes.
He didn't sign one like he should have before that Jerry Jones offered him. Too bad for him.
He's holding out for what, $80 million a year or whatever it is now.
Holding out for 95.
95 mil. All right.
My next one is after long debate, deliberation, and sit downs with both team, former players of the team. The Washington Redskins have a new name.
Ooh, real.
And after all this time that they spent in these boardrooms talking about this, they will be known for this year as the Washington Football Team.
It's so bad.
It's terrible.
I mean, I know that you don't want to just pick something just to pick it to get it out there, but like, how hard is it? I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You pick the Wolverines, or you pick the Sentinels, or you pick whatever you pick. That's just what the team's going to be.
Yep.
Are the Buffalo Bills a good mascot? I mean, a buffalo. I don't know.
I mean,
are the Browns a good mascot?
No, the Browns aren't. But
I mean, there's some Green Bay Packers. I know that you're a fan of the team, but factory workers being your mascot, not the best mascot. I mean that's what they originally were, the Acme Packers.
Yeah. Cheese Packers.
Yeah. So that's not a great mascot either. I mean, but who cares, because that's what they are, right?
Yep.
Just pick something, and that way you don't have to go through a season where people don't even know what the heck to call you.
I know, that's the thing. It's like they say, it's bound to be seen as if they're not just going to always be the Washington football team. But I mean,
that would be awful.
It would be awful.
As awful as it is to do 1 year of doing this, it would be more awful to keep it this way.
Why are they doing 1 year? I mean, they know, like, their jersey sales and, like, all their, like, stuff that they're selling is going to go way down. No one's going to want to buy a Washington football jersey unless you're a super collector.
Well, that's the thing, is this stuff, if it does only last for 1 year, being able to get an original, 2020 Washington football team jersey or whatever, that could actually be worth something down the road.
Yes.
To be able to have a provenance that says, you actually bought it in the year 2020 or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a 1 year, one-off thing.
Yep. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But if you're a regular fan going to the stadium and seeing the game, are you going to buy a Washington football jersey of your favorite player? Or are you just going to be like, I'm just going to wait a year and get the Washington Sentinels or whatever they're going to be?
Yep.
And it's like, well, that one's going to be good for the next few years.
Right.
Not Washington football team.
Right. Yeah. I just don't like what do you like there used to be the Skins,
Yeah.
Like the Jets or the there's you don't ever call a team by their area, that they're from. I don't know. I don't like it.
I mean, if I would have went the Football Club of Washington or the Washington Football Club, kind of like
football club sounds much better than football team.
Because it also goes back to the, earlier years, it's vintage,
right.
where these actually are clubs, they're football clubs,
right.
how they originated.
Yeah.
But the football team,
that's just stupid.
Just be like the Football Club of Washington.
And you know what?
Is way better.
It's not like they didn't know that this could have been coming for a while. They've been being harassed about, changing their name for years now.
Yeah.
So they should have probably had a little bit more foresight on this, as if we're going to get forced to change our name, what would we change it to? This is not something that just popped up overnight where, nobody had ever heard of the, Washington being forced to change their name, and now all of a sudden here they're in this, pickle that they have to figure something out.
Yep.
They should have been thinking about it, at least somewhat. It's a multi-billion-dollar organization. They should have a little bit more foresight.
Yeah, and I just don't get how you could not get all of upper management. And if they really did reach out to all the players and former players, current players, like different people to try to find out like what they could name it, I find it hard to believe after reaching out to all those people and deliberating it, yourself, that you couldn't come up with a name.
Right.
But the funny thing about their name is that there is a person that patented like all the possible names that it could be.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So all the rumored names and stuff that it might be or could be turned into, like one guy owns.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And he's got them all.
I thought about doing that with Twitter when they were like when they changed it to the Washington football team. I was like, I wonder if they've already gone and gotten that Twitter name. And I was like, I wonder if I can go get that, and then be like, I'll give it to you for $1,000, or whatever. But I didn't do that. But that's the kind of not looking ahead kind of thing that I would expect from the Washington football team, because clearly they don't have that ability to predict the future in any kind of capacity.
Yeah. I guess he's held them for years.
Yeah.
Like years
really?
and years he's held, like some of them are newer, like he keeps getting a couple every year.
Yeah.
Like he just keeps going, like buying different patents for names
funny.
and stuff.
That's very funny. Okay, next item up I have here. Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Alex Smith, quarterback for the Washington football team, has been cleared for football activity, and that is pending a physical. So that would be interesting if he was able to make a. I genuinely did not think he was ever going to play again.
Nah. Yeah.
I think we discussed it before on the podcast, but very interesting to see that he, if he does come back, what a story.
Oh yeah. What a redemption tale.
He almost actually died from the infection that happened due to the surgery.
Yep.
It was very close to him being, donezo. So if he's able to come back and actually play football, what a story that would be.
Be real incredible.
So I'm rooting for Alex Smith. I hope he comes back. I think he could beat out Dwayne Haskins for the job there.
Yeah, very potentially.
As long as he's reasonably healthy and able to, move around in the pocket.
Yeah, they brought him in and gave him a good contract.
Yeah, they like him.
They wanted him to be the starter, and it just didn't work out.
Although that organization, as far as the GM and coaches and all that stuff has changed since then.
True.
With Ron Rivera taking over there essentially.
If he's a decent quarterback, they'll find a market.
Yeah.
Like either they'll play him or they'll trade him away, or he'll end up somewhere.
This is just a good year to have two quarterbacks.
That too
with coronavirus.
Yep.
I'm pretty happy the Jets have Joe Flacco. I mean, Joe Flacco's not great, but Joe Flacco's better than a lot of backups in the league.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy the Jets have at least a solid, backup quarterback option going on this year.
Yeah, for sure.
But all right, and why don't you do your last one?
All right, my last one is also a Washington football team news.
What is this, the Washington football team podcast?
Yeah. Darius Geis, we know that he went on injured reserve last year from an injury, was a promising rookie and a potential starter for the team for fantasy. Been cleared to play for the 2020 season, so we will see how that goes. He was a a highly ranked rookie coming out of college. He had
2 injuries in a row, didn't he?
Yeah.
2 years in a row of being injured.
We've only really saw him play in like 4 games.
A handful of games.
A handful of games. And
I think the first year he got injured in the preseason.
Yep. And he showed some promise at being a running back, and those are positions of high importance in fantasy. So something to keep an eye on.
Yep, and he's not going to be one of those guys that – he's going to be like a Dalvin Cook from last year or the year before, where you're able to get him at a pretty good price.
Yeah,
because he was dealing with injuries the year before. So
and no one's really seen him. Like, you're not going to spend a second round pick in your fantasy drafting this
definitely
guy.
Not.
So he's a late rounder
for sure. Yep. And the last thing that I have on my news docket is the Jamal Adams situation. You guys all know what I'm talking about. Got real ugly there at the end. Not the best thing to have happen. And so Jamal Adams has been obviously vying for a trade to get out of New York. Does not like that he did not get a new deal, new money deal from the Jets and the front office. He is, I think, he's coming into his 4th year as on his rookie contract, so he's still under contract. There's a 5th year option, then a possible franchise tag. So he knew that he wasn't going anywhere. So what does he do? He goes and he contacts Manish Mehta and just slams the organization. Talks about how Adam Gase doesn't have any authority in the locker room and everybody hates him. Talks about how Joe Douglas is inept at his job and doesn't know what he's doing. When the Woody Johnson allegations were taking place, he was talking, he was talking out about Woody Johnson, the owner, doing everything he could to be a disruption and a distraction in the building. And with everybody coming to report to training camp this week, it was just not a good situation.
Yep.
Apparently, the deal with the Seahawks was already, the wheels were already in motion, according to Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk. So when Jamal Adams decided to go out there and talk about the organization, the front office, and the head coach of the organization, that was while these wheels were already in motion. These things were already starting to happen. He almost jeopardized his own deal trying to get out of there just so he could try to be a jerk and smear the team that drafted him and, the fans that, cheered for him. Just, I don't know, low-class stuff, in my opinion. I mean, Jamal Adams is an amazing talent. I mean, there's absolutely no denying that. Absolutely amazing. But, I don't know. I really value just taking the higher road, and he definitely did not do that in this situation. He deserved new money, but, it's a tight year with the coronavirus and everything going on.
Yep.
There's not a lot of new money to, go around. The general manager knows that.
Yeah, and he didn't get any extra money by going to the Seahawks.
No,
like he's playing on the same deal.
Of course.
And with the coronavirus and the salary cap going down, all these players who are holding out and doing all this bad stuff aren't doing themselves any favors for contracts.
No.
Because there's going to be less money next year, so they're not going to get the big contract that they thought they did. Plus, you have this mark of being a disruption on your resume.
Right.
Teams are going to be conservative.
I agree.
This time around.
Yep. And a safety is not one of those positions. It's not like a quarterback. It's not like an elite rusher, edge rusher. It's not one of those positions where you can really warrant a huge salary. And the Seahawks gave up quite a bit to get him. They gave up 2 first-rounders and a third-rounder.
Second.
No, third. It's 2 first and a third for the Jets. And they gave up a pretty decent safety. It's a third. And the Jets gave up Jamal Adams and a 4th in the 2022 draft. So, right. That's a pretty good haul. The Jets gave up a great safety for a decent safety. The Jets probably had maybe the best safety tandem in the league prior to this trade happening. Now they have a pretty good safety tandem. And so, I don't know, to get 2 firsts and a third and still have a pretty decent, defensive backfield like that, I don't know. I think that's a really good trade, especially since obviously things were going downhill anyway with the Jamal Adams situation. He was not going to be a part of the long-term plans for the organization regardless. Get as much as you can. I think that's an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah, I think if you get 2 first-round draft picks for even a star player, that gives
for a safety
good talent. I mean, you have the next 2 years, you have 2 first-round draft picks, so you're set up pretty well in the draft. It's the Seahawks, so
they're going to be back in the first.
Most likely, it's going to be a 20-something pick.
Yep.
Barring anything weird happening.
But you can use those to trade back.
Yeah.
Teams that are in even further back in the first round that want somebody specifically, you can use that to pick up, just move back a couple picks and then pick up a second or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a pretty fair deal.
You can parlay that into a lot of, good draft capital.
Absolutely.
So,
even 2 first-round picks. I mean, you can get some talent with 2 first-round draft picks.
Yep. I mean, second-rounders are incredibly valuable still.
Mm-hmm.
To have first-rounders still with that 5th-year option available on that contract, that's big.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
All right, that does it for my section of the news.
Yep.
All right, welcome into our exclusive interview with Daniel Kelly, former NFL scout to the New York Jets, is on the line with us. We're going to ask him a few questions, get to know him, general chit-chat with me and T-Bone as we normally do. So why don't you let us know about yourself?
Yeah, so you were an NFL scout with the Jets, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that was what was the time frame in which you were working with them?
It would have been 1998 was my first season until 2002. So I was hired by Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick. Worked on arguably the greatest staff in NFL history. It was a tremendous experience. Spent 4 years in the pro scouting department with the New York Jets.
That's amazing. So you worked directly with Parcells and with Belichick?
Yes.
That's so cool. So let me ask you. So you were there then when the whole debacle went down with Belichick, I resign as HC of the NYJ?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, it was a Forrest Gump movie. If you guys, a moment I should say, you guys like Forrest Gump? You ever seen the movie?
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's classic.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It was a Forrest Gump moment because Bill Belichick passed me right in the hallway before he walked into that sign, and he said hi to me, and I said, hi, Coach, and he said, hi, Dan, and he walked in there, and we all remember the press conference.
Wow. So you were right there behind the scenes at a moment that a lot of Jets fans consider to be one of the most depressing and pivotal in franchise history.
Yeah, absolutely. I was right there. As I like to say, my Forrest Gump impersonation, that nice young coach walked right past me in the hallway before he went to the
That's amazing. And this is Tom, by the way. So just out of curiosity, because I was reading your story there on SportsIllustrated.com, kind of outlining your story of how you became an NFL scout. It was kind of an uphill battle the whole way for you. That be an unfair assessment of how you got to be where you were.
No, it was straight uphill.
Yeah. It seems to me like the ability for you to do that requires a singular focus. People that really, really, really want to be in a position or have achieved something. A lot of times it seems to me that the way that they get there is by being solely focused on one thing. I mean, do you have other things that you consider yourself to be passionate about, or is it pretty much strictly just football?
Yeah, I'm extremely passionate about God. I'm extremely passionate about my wife, Samantha, and extremely passionate about football. My wife would tell you the same thing if she were on the show with us. Any of those three things would get me going. But you're exactly 100% right. At that stage of my life, from the time I was 8 years old when I became a rabid fan of the Washington Redskins back when I was growing up in Minnesota, to the time I got hired by the Jets at 24, it was a singular focus to a fault because I couldn't make it in school. I couldn't make it I barely passed through high school, failed out of a small community college, got fired a number of jobs. It was such a singular focus, to your point, that I couldn't do anything else besides football.
Yeah, and I'm the kind of person, and I don't know, I think Hattie might agree with me here. we have a lot of different things that we're interested in. Like there's, my fault would probably be that I don't ever really commit to anything. I'll be interested in doing something, and then as soon as I kind of start to get into it, I'm moving on to the next thing. I feel like in order to be a scout, where you have to be grinding tape constantly, constantly evaluating and assessing, players and schemes and all those kinds of things, there can't be a lot of room for other things going on.
There's really not. It's a single focus, to your point. I mean, you bring up a really good point. I saw a book a few years back in Target called The Power of One Thing. It caught my attention because it says if you're going to accomplish anything great in your life, was the premise of the book, you need to focus on really one thing. And when you are focused on scouting, I mean, it's a full time. I mean, like Scott Pioli, who went on to become NFL executive a decade for his work with the New England Patriots, was my boss, the guy who hired me with the Jets and the pro department. He told me in my initial call when he hired me, he said, Dan, he said, overtime in the NFL is not optional, it's required. And you can't be looking at the clock. You can't be doing anything. You just have to be dialed in. As a matter of fact, the room I worked in, the pro room, and with the New York Jets at Hofstra University at WeBU Bank Hall, had no clock and no windows.
Wow.
That
almost sounds depressing.
So I heard.
Huh?
So I heard that when you were actually working, you were putting in 80+ hour weeks. But before you got the job, when you were writing in just your journals and books and keeping track of all these scouting things, just was that like more for fun? Was it something that you didn't really feel as work, or did you always have that in the back of your mind as, I'm putting in this time, even though I enjoy it, but I'm going to do a little extra because my plan is to go to the NFL or to get hired?
I just loved it. I just, to me, I can sit down in a room with some film and a TV, and I can sit there literally for 12, 15, 20 hours watching film, and it feels like, an hour or two. I get completely lost in it. I get completely lost in the players. I'm extremely passionate about it. I look at every single detail, every single body movement. I'll watch a play 4, 5, 6 times on a guy sometimes. It's like almost solving a mystery. Why didn't he catch the ball, or what happened, or who did this, or who's doing that, or what happened there. So I'll watch it. As a matter of fact, in my 1998 draft book report I did, that was my 350-page resume. I sent out 3 copies of my book to every team in the NFL, and that's how I got hired by the Jets. Overnight mail, I sent those books out. I included my handwritten notes even with the scouting reports, because I wanted to convey and communicate to teams that I wasn't copying anybody, that I actually did the work myself, and I wanted to show people the meticulous attention to detail that I had. Because it's a game of inches in every regard.
That's amazing.
Yep. So how many hours, if you had to guess, would you say you put in just writing notes and doing stuff before you were even hired?
Oh, countless. Just in my 1998 draft book alone, it's 350 pages, like I said, that served as my resume.
Yep.
I spent every dime I had, $2,300, and spent another $1,300 in credit to get my book sent out. Just on that project alone, to get hired by the New York Jets in the pro scouting department, I would say I was getting 10 to 20 hours sleep a week. So you're talking about hundreds of hours of watching film, grinding film, taking notes, filling out scouting evaluations and reports, organizing them all, putting them together in folder sequence, getting the book self-published, and then setting out the book eventually. So, it was just a countless amount of hours. I couldn't even guess, guys. It was around the clock. I would fall asleep on my lunch break. I was a loan officer at Bank America during the time right before I got hired at the Jets. I went from the bank to the Jets, and I'd fall asleep on my lunch break. I could hardly keep my eyes open. I was taking, Jolt and No-Dos and drinking coffee.
I haven't heard
back in the Jolt days.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. So, you were obviously killing yourself doing everything that you could during this time to, put together this very comprehensive, scouting report. When you finally, got to where you were going, the promised land, you found yourself in a scouting, department of front office of a, an NFL team. Was it more work after you became an actual NFL scout than what you were doing when you were trying to get there in the first place?
It really was more work. I mean, and that's the thing. I was very eye-opening going from being a passionate, rabid fan of football to working in it. I mean, there is no off season. You go right from at the end of the year, you jump right into free agency. You go right from free agency into the draft. You go right from the combine, the draft. You go right into that, the mini camps, right from that to training camp, right into that to the season. There really is no downtime per se. So, working, 70 to 90 hours plus a week, is really it's the battle cry. It's the drumbeat in the NFL because there's always something to do. And there's always a fear, not so much with me, but amongst GMs and directors and stuff in the NFL, there's a fear that somebody's outworking me right now. And Charlie Weiss, who was our I worked on a star-studded staff that included Charlie Weiss as our offensive coordinator, who went on to become the head coach of Notre Dame and everything. And, Charlie slept in his office 2 nights a week or 3 nights, depending. I'd leave at, I'd get in the office about 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd leave at 10:30 at night. And, Charlie would scream out his door, don't you want to win? It's like, Charlie, come on, man. But that was the thing. And really that's the battle cry in the NFL. I mean, back when I grew up a rabid, passionate fan of the Washington Redskins, Joe Gibbs, the coach of the Redskins all through my upbringing, he slept in the office 4 or 5 nights a week. They had a little hole in the door where they slide in pizzas for his dinner.
Wow.
That's what it takes. There's always something more to do. There's always another research project. There's always another tape to watch. There's always another guy to look at. Even when you look at guys for 6, 7, 8 games, maybe you got to look at one more game just to confirm some things. It's like an investigation, and you want to do thorough work if you care about it as much as I care about it. I never wanted to make a mistake. Now, obviously, I'm a human being, so I make mistakes. But you just work relentlessly, and I stress the word relentlessly. In the team I work for, the Jets. Anything short of a Super Bowl was a disappointment. Being a Super Bowl champion was a disappointment. I remember driving and I was right in the back seat of the car with Scott Pioli, who's Bill Parcells' son-in-law, who's, he was my boss at the time with the Jets, and I'm riding with him and JoJo Wooden, who's now the director of personnel with the Chargers. We're riding along. We had lost the AFC Championship game, the Denver, and I'm a second-year guy, and right in the backseat of the car down in Orlando for the NFL Europe back when they had that. And I said, I just kind of casually chimed up, and I said, well, that sure was great last year. We came one game away from the Super Bowl. The car just went dead silent. Scott Pioli, who you might have seen on Sunday Night Football, on NBC and all that.
Yeah.
He turns around from his seat. He turns around and he says, I don't ever want to hear those words come out of your mouth again. One game short is not good enough.
So let me ask. So, obviously every NFL team has a scouting department, right? And I would imagine that every scouting department probably has the same mindset as what you're describing here, or at least that's my assumption. I guess my question is, what makes a general manager and they're really great? What makes them, what gives them that edge above every other scout? Just luck? Is it them putting in the extra hours? Is it, their skill and their job? How much of that is actually just kind of the luck of the draw, and how much of that comes down to, putting in the hours and knowing exactly what you're looking for?
That's a great question, and I've looked at this. I've talked to one of my personal friends, Mark Trestman, about this. I've been friends with Mark for 25 years, who's the only coach in the history of football that coached 2 MVPs in 2 different leagues. The quarterbacks with Rich Gannon in Oakland and Anthony Cabello up in the CFL with the Montreal Alouettes. And I've talked to him about this because I said, Mark, and he's really a brilliant guy, and the former head coach of the Bears and whatnot. And I said, Mark, everybody does the same things. Everybody lifts the same weights. So, to your point, everybody, is doing the same things, the same diet, the same things. Everybody watches film. Everybody has access to the same things. What separates one team from another? And I've always looked at your question. I've always, I've thought about that relentlessly for years. And to me, really, it comes down to the GMs who are truest to themselves. Because any system can win in the NFL, but it's the guys, the GMs, the Bobby Beathard, the Bill Polians, the Ron Wolfs, the John Schneiders of the world that are true to themselves are the guys who have typically the most success because they can communicate their system to people, and it actually resonates with the players and the staff. And once it resonates, those guys take action. And once they take action, they win because they believe in the guy who's preaching the message. And the guys who are most successful are the guys who are willing to take chances, are willing to take risks, and guys who can see the promised land. I can't stand sitting here watching and listening. I tried to become the general manager of the Cleveland Browns 3 years ago, and I can't stand to see these guys that get up these podiums in the NFL and say, well, I sure hope we're competitive this year, or, well, we're going to try to be a wild card this year, or, well, we'll try to do some things. No, if you can't stand up there unequivocally and say, we're going to win the Super Bowl, don't bother, because if your leader can't see the promised land, there's no way you're getting there.
That's the fire that you got to have right there. I love it. I absolutely love it. It makes me fired up.
I'm fired up about football just right now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'm fired up too. I mean, we're all fired up.
But that's like the GM side and like the different personnel side. So as a scout, like your perspective, like you're going into a draft, and obviously you have like your list of players that you like and you've thought of. What is your strategy going in? Are you just trying to get like, do you want like eight out of 10 or 8 out of 10 guys and maybe a couple nines, or are you taking chances on a few guys looking for, the next Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, or do you just want like to try to get the solid guys and really hope that like one of them is better than what you think they are? So what's your strategy like going into a draft as far as trying to get good players and fill out a football team?
Are you talking about just to clarify, are you talking about being as a scout? What's my perspective, or being a general manager? What would be my perspective?
As a scout, like what's your perspective? Are you going to, recommend 3 guys to your team that, you think could be like the next Patrick Mahomes? Or are you going to just recommend like 3 solid guys who you think are going to be starters for the next 4 years?
Great question. I'm strictly looking for the dynamic players. That's what I look for. I'm looking for the guys, because let me tell you guys something, to our listeners, and share this insight with you. I've watched so much tape that I can't begin to describe it in my life. And so often when I turn on the tape, it's just, like Bill Parcells used to call them JAGs, J-A-G, for just another guy. It just so many times you turn on the tape, and no offense to the players, but I mean, so many times it's just, if you've seen one, you've seen them all. They're tight in the hips. They don't use their hands right. I'm amazed at how many guys at the collegiate NFL level don't even know how to do the basics and the fundamentals of football. I mean, even tackling, blocking, shedding a block, catching the ball with your hands. All these little basic little things that people used to learn back in Pee Wee football. These guys don't know. So many guys are just, there's nothing special about them. They're just guys. A lot of times the guys in the NFL, the reason why they make it and other guys don't make it is because they have the right agent, and they can get the GM on the phone and get their guys signed. That's the only difference between a lot of these guys making it and not making it. But when you turn on the film and you see the guy that just jumps off the screen, and obviously Barry Sanders is a real, a dynamic illustration of this. But a guy like that just jumps off the screen at you. Those are the guys that excite me. Those are the guys that I'm like, wow, this is something. There's something really to this guy. Those are the guys I would recommend as a scout in the pro department. Those are guys that excited me, because those are the difference makers. So those, for every Jamal Adams, there's 50 guys that just put you to sleep. So that's what I'm looking for. I mean, my scouting mentor is Lionel Vitale, who was mentored by Bill Belichick and Ozzie Newsome. Lionel's won 4 Super Bowls, 3 with the Patriots. He was Belichick's most trusted scout up in New England. He and I hooked up at the Jets, and he became my mentor during my time in New York. And he taught me, Danny, hey, stick with the dynamic ones. And it's always something that stuck with me, is I want the guys that are just something really special. And you can find those guys here and there. So if I'm going to stand on the table and fight for a guy and yell for a guy and say, we need to bring this guy in, you better believe the guy is going to be as dynamic as they come.
Yeah. So that actually kind of leads into my next question. We do a lot of fantasy stuff during fantasy season in the NFL. I'm trying to get the one up on our opponents. As you're watching tape, what are like your top 3 guys that you've seen on tape that are currently in the NFL that you think are better than maybe their stats say they are?
Maybe poised for an outbreak.
Poised for a breakout.
Yeah.
Well, you guys try to get a leg up in the competition by having your own show.
Hey, absolutely. We'll use anything.
That's right.
I look at, as you're talking, I got to sort through, as you say, that I have about 4,000 players going through like a Rolodex in my head.
Yeah.
It's guys I love. I mean, breakout guys. Are you talking about guys that nobody really knows about? Or are you talking about star players?
Just people that maybe the
have
stats
underperformed,
don't represent how good they are, or are overlooked, or maybe it's like a third wide receiver on a team that just gets overpowered by the Amari Coopers and the OBJs and the big time players of the league. Someone that's poised for a breakout that plays better than you would think.
Maybe somebody that you thought going into their pro career, you expected them to be one of those dynamic players in the league, and so far they haven't lived up to that yet.
Right. Well, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head quite like that. I think some of the lesser-known guys I like in the league, I think they could really do well. I think of the Matheson kid, up to the backup running back with the Vikings. I love him. If I was a GM right now, that'd be one phone call that I'm making. The guy behind Delvin Cook. I love Matheson. I think that he could start on any team in the league. Really, he's a guy that's really caught my attention. Somebody that's really stood out a great deal to me. I think that him. I think the quarterbacks, any quarterback you take in the NFC East is going to be a winner. I think I love the kid in New York Giants. I think he's going to have a breakout year. I love the maturity he plays with. I love the way he plays the game. I was really not sold on him coming out, but he's really surprised me. Maybe to your point, guys like that just kind of jump in my head off the top of my mind here. That just kind of come to mind.
So, because I'm kind of curious, I think it's an interesting thing to be able to speak with you. You don't usually hear from pro football scouts. You'll hear from the head coaches, assistant coaches, general managers. They'll take the podium and speak. You don't usually get to hear the perspective of the scouting department, people that are in those rooms, and talking to the general managers and informing them, because obviously it's more the scouts that are doing the legwork on this stuff and telling the general managers what they're seeing. If you are in love with a guy, right, you're going through the tape and you find somebody that you're going to stand on the table and scream for, how do you go about conveying that to the general manager? Say you guys are on the clock, or I don't know, maybe you guys do it before. I would imagine you obviously have meetings beforehand, but how do you really make sure that a guy that you 100% believe in gets on the radar of a general manager?
Well, that was the problem. I didn't go about doing that right. That's why I'm not in the league anymore.
Yeah. So how did you do it wrong?
Well, that's the problem. Otherwise, right now I'd probably be because the guy that basically Tom Dimitroff is now the GM of the Falcons, and I played my cards right with the Jets. I'd probably be sitting in his chair. Maybe, I don't know. Because everybody else I worked with, all the young guys went on and became GMs. Brian Gain became the GM of the Houston Texans. Trent Baalke broke in 2 years after me, or a year after me. He went to the 49ers and all that. So how I went about doing it was, I just wore my heart on my sleeve. Really, I was so passionate about the guys and so passionate about the players. I couldn't care less about the politics. That got me in a little bit of trouble because, I just wanted to win. And I didn't care about channeling things the right way or going. I just was I was so tunnel vision into winning that I just wanted to, I just felt, whoever I was passionate about, I just went nuts about them. And that really wasn't my role at the time. I was a pro personnel assistant,
Gotcha.
Which meant I was a kind of an entry level guy, and my job was just to get the chicken wings, pick the guys up at the airport, keep my mouth quiet. And had I done that, I'd have 3 rings right now with the New England Patriots. And like I said, I'd probably be an NFL general manager. But I was like that wild racehorse in the desert, so to speak. I was just so passionate about what I was doing, and I wanted to win so badly. I just didn't, I just didn't know how to channel that. and I offended some people in the building with some of my evaluations. Now, my evaluations turned out to be correct. But how I went about it was too immature at the time. And, I lacked patience as a young man. I lacked discipline as a young man. And I just had this wild, tenacious passion. And, it was just something where, looking back at it, and really nobody was there to stop me from doing it. Nobody said, hey, maybe you shouldn't, just maybe kind of, take it easy on this one. I went against my boss, Scott Pioli, and a couple players. And I made some noise that way, and it really wasn't received that well.
Yeah.
And I regret it. I regret it looking back. I do. That wasn't Scott's responsibility. It was my responsibility to do what I was asked to do, and I kind of got out of bounds on a couple things.
So you took the passion that you had as a high schooler who was, absolutely in love with the game. You took it to the professional world where it didn't translate as well.
Well, right. There was a saying around the building. I mean, you wouldn't know the week before the AFC Championship game if you're just somebody who knew nothing about football and you walked in our building. I mean, Bill Parcells had a saying that was act like you've been there before, and you wouldn't know if you walked in our building if we were 2-14 or if we were undefeated, 16-0. You wouldn't even know the difference because the vibe in the building was. I remember Bill Parcells after we beat Jacksonville in the 1998 playoffs before the AFC Championship game. One of the reporters asked Parcells, well, are you going to enjoy this one for a while, Coach? And something to that effect. And Parcells said, hey, listen, fellas, he goes, I'm not in the enjoyment business.
Yeah, I love that.
So it was, the passion I had was just, it wasn't, the evaluations were correct, but it was just about, knowing how to channel it. Like my scouting mentor, Lionel Vitale, who's now the director of college scouting with the Dallas Cowboys, who I've talked to for the last 20 years for thousands of hours on the phone. He's been mentored by Belichick and Ozzie Newsome, and he's worked with Parcells, and he talks to Jerry Jones every week and all this. And, when he was a young scout, when he broke in with the Cleveland Browns, when Belichick was there, they had a boss by the name of Mike Lombardi. You've heard that name before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've heard the Lombardi name a couple times.
He's a Packers fan.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And Lombardi had a saying. He was the boss man back when my buddy, was a entry level scout with the Browns, and Scott Pioli was entry level, and Mike Tannenbaum was entry level, and the guy who you guys have on your Twitter today, Mike Tannenbaum, he was entry level, and George Kokanis was there, and all these guys were there entry level, and Mike Lombardi, he had everybody. Michael Lombardi had everybody kind of pulled into a room. Lionel told me the story. Who's with the Dallas Cowboys now, and he's got 4 rings, and he told me the story. He said Lombardi told us, hey, this is my team, and as long as you guys are here, we're going to do things my way. Now, when you guys get a team someday, you can do things your way, but for now, we're doing it my way, and that's really the thing that I didn't really plug into or really understand looking back as a young man with the New York Jets.
And I got to throw this out there because I'm a Jets fan. I've been a Jets fan my whole life. And when we connected up on Twitter, and you told me, and I read your story there on Sports Illustrated, and saw that you were with the '98 championship game. It just kind of it made me smile because as a lifelong Jets fan, I mean, you watch games with your old man or whatever when you're a kid growing up. But the first game that I remember watching of the Jets was the '98 championship game. I know because I had a lot of people over at my house in the basement. And me and a bunch of my little kid buddies. We all, bet on the championship games to see who was going to the Super Bowl. I remember earlier in that year we beat the Broncos, and I was so excited because we were playing the Broncos in the championship game. And they were shut out through the first half. I was so excited. So that specific game holds a lot of sentimental value to me. So I just think it's very cool that that you had a part in that game. Because that means you have a part in my sports fandom that I was so excited. We had Testaverde and Corbett and Curtis Martin. I mean, it was a great team.
Yeah, it really was a great team. It was an amazing season. It was my first season. I think that's so cool. Your story about how you were all gathered around watching the game. That's your first game you remember. I think that's so cool, the parallels. And now here we are, years later on this show together. I think it was an incredible experience. It was my first year in the league. I thought we were going to the Super Bowl. I mean, Will Smith, going to Miami or whatever. His song was on the radio.
Yeah.
The game was in Miami. I was sure we were going to the show. It was just an incredible experience to be a part of because really that was my claim to fame. That was my most moment I was most proud of, was prior to, and I talked about this in my book, Whatever It Takes, was during that week leading up to the game. These ideas start coming to my mind that there's got to be some, because you remember Mike Shanahan, the coach of the Broncos, right?
Yes. Yep.
Right. So he came from the Bill Walsh school, that said we script the first 15 plays of the game, right? The Bill Walsh tree.
Yep.
Right. So I started having these ideas go through my mind, guys, that, and our listeners, that there's got to be some kind of rhyme or reason or some kind of a trend or some kind of a pattern to these plays. So I went ahead and started a research project on looking at Denver's first 15 plays of each game during the season. I pulled out all the league play-by-plays and all the, the game tapes, and I opened up an Excel spreadsheet and I started charting all the plays, and I did that for the first 16 games of the season for the wild card game, divisional game, so 18 games total, and I started to notice a pattern that in game 1, Shanahan ran plays 1 through 15. In game number 2, he started with play number 2 in the list and worked back to the top of the list. And game 3 started with game 3 and worked to the top of the list. And game 4 of the season, regular season, he started with play number 4 in the list and worked its way back to the top. Well, this continued all the way to the 8th game. Then he worked it backwards up the staircase the other way. And then the first playoff game the Broncos had, the play scripting was identical to the first regular season game. And then the second game, the divisional playoff game, the play calling was identical to the second regular season game. So I was sure that I had the play scripting. I'd cracked Mike Shanahan's code as being a first-year scout in the league. I'd cracked his code, so I stayed all night. I put together a report. I ran into Eric Mangini's office the next morning before they left in the airplane for Denver, and I said, I know what Denver's going to run for the first 15 plays. And he's like, how do you know that? I just shared it with him like I just shared with you guys. And he was like, well, thank you, Dan. I'll take this with me, and I'll show it to Bill, being Bill Belichick, who was our defensive coordinator at the time. And off they went. And sure enough, I was at Bill Parcells' secretary's house watching the AFC title game that you're alluding to. And sure enough, I predicted the first 15 plays of the game before it ever happened. And that was my, the moment I was most proud of, because, there's nothing more I wanted to do than win a Super Bowl. And had it not been for a couple blunders that day, we were on our way.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Could have been a Jets Packers Super Bowl.
No, man.
Yeah.
That would have been good. I'm going to move along to we had a question from one of our listeners who had a question for you. He wanted to know how would the next draft be affected by the situation going on with coronavirus now? So if there's no college football season, how do you think that the NFL scouting departments are going to, approach this? I mean, are they going to stick strictly to what they saw on tape from the last year? Are they going to make assumptions based on what, would have happened this year? How do you think that the NFL will approach that with the draft?
Yep. And I just mentioned that before you answer it, that question came out from @GusTune on Twitter,
Yes.
a grown man and great listener.
Also a Jets fan.
Also a Jets fan. You got to give him a
Yes.
shout out that he adds the question. Thank you very much, Gus, for that. Yep. And now we can turn it to you for the answer there.
Yeah, absolutely. JETS, Jets. That is a great question by our listener. It's a very intricate question, because we're really in uncharted territory when it comes to scouting in the NFL or playing or doing anything in the NFL. We're uncharted territory when we leave our front door. I mean, so it's how will the season shake out now in the college realm. The college scouts, to your point, are just going to have to go with what they have to go off of, which means watching a lot of junior tape, watching some sophomore tape on juniors. If they don't play, having some extra time to do a lot of background work. The background research part of the process will not be really affected, because scouting on tape only accounts for probably, half the evaluation process. The rest of the evaluation process entails, talking to the kid's coach, talking to the position coaches, talking to the janitor, talking to anybody who knows the kid, going back in his past, college, high school, grade school, talking to his friends, really looking at the social media has become a huge part of the evaluation process. I've been told from people I know who are in front offices around the league, is because they go, they have people, designated in these buildings to really dig in and dive into the social media of these players, because, there's some real telling signs or some real warning signs sometimes. Maybe there's some gang affiliations, maybe there's some different kind of stuff, maybe there's, some crazy stuff that people are posting. Teams want to know about that stuff. That's become a big part of the evaluation process, or at least an integral piece of that puzzle. So there'll be enough to keep scouts busy. They could work right from their house and still put in 18 hours a day, a combination of watching film that they have access to, doing the background research I'm alluding to, looking at their, talking to the people that know them, getting to know the kid inside and out. They'll still be to interview the players, whether it's on Skype or Zoom or, if there's no combine or, I'm just exaggerating here. If there's, hopefully things are back to normal by that time, but there's going to be a time where they're still going to do all the off the field stuff they normally do. FBI background searches. They run an FBI search on all the guys who are going to draft. They want to know everything about a kid, and they still sometimes don't really always know. But, scouts will still be able to work 18 to 20 hours a day with no problem, whether or not there's a college football season.
Very interesting. I had no idea that there was that level. I assumed that most of the scouting process was done by tape, but very interesting.
So along those lines, do you think that that this has an effect on teams next year for going maybe more conservative, or do you think they take more chances next year?
In terms of on the field or in the draft?
In the draft. Like, because we are in uncharted territory, you think teams just kind of like, well, we're just going to throw a whole bunch of spaghetti at the wall and hope one guy sticks, or you think they kind of go the more conservative route?
Well, that's what half the teams in the league already do. All we gotta do is look at the record to see who's throwing the pasta against the wall.
Right.
I think we could see some wrinkles. We could see some. I was on a show yesterday, we were seeing an 80-man roster possibly this year, I think, right? And so. I think that, depending on how many people test positive, or if they test positive, or what happens, and, it could be a situation where people take more chances. It could be a situation where they kind of stay true to form. I think the one thing that really stands out of my mind, in the minds of the people I know in the league that I speak to, is that, this is really going to be an unpredictable situation. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone what's going to happen. I mean, every day the news is changing. Every day it's fluid and moving and changing, and the regulations are changing, and what's going to happen is changing. And I mean, there's so many variables at play. Nobody really knows how this is going to play out. It's really probably the most unpredictable NFL season I would say we've ever had. It's the most unpredictability we've ever had in our society since I've been alive. I'm 46 years old. So I mean, it's something where it's how it will affect the college draft, what teams will do. It's really, that's way above my pay grade. I would just be speculating at best. But you're right. They could take more chances. Just depends how things shake out. It'll be very interesting to see. I know America needs football. America wants football. And, I think that the league is going to do everything they can to give this country football.
All right. Fantastic. I love it. So there's several other things that I'd love to get to in this interview. Unfortunately, we have a confined amount of space here that we can do this. So I do want to make sure that we give you the opportunity to plug your book that you wrote. So can you tell us a little bit about the book that you got coming out, or that's come out?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you for that opportunity. It's called Whatever It Takes. It's a true story of a fan making it to the NFL. It's a lot different than any other book in the market. It's a very unique story about a small town kid, being me, who basically had a very limited football background and made it all the way to being hired by the greatest staff in NFL history, like I alluded to. And the reason I say that, of course, I was on staff also with Bill Belichick, who's known as the greatest coach of all time. So it's a book that outlines my journey. It's a story. It really relates to fans well, from what I've been told. Because it's written by a fan. I mean, I'm a guy that wore paint on my face to the games and loved the game, and matter of fact, I still haul around a tote of games, on VHS tape. It's a book written by a fan to the fans, and it's really on the back cover. I think it kind of sums it up best of the book. It's a story of perseverance, a message of hope, and it's not just about a book. Hey, look at me, look how great I am, look what I've accomplished in my life. This book really is about the reader. This book is about inspiring people to their dreams, inspiring people on their journey, and know that there's hope to go on no matter what happens in their lives, because that's what I found to be true in my life. The book's available wherever books are available online, Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. You can go to my book website, whateverittakesbook.com, to see a little bit more background about the book. But, my prayer is that this book really becomes a blessing to whoever reads it, and it inspires you on your journey.
Fantastic. It sounds amazing. I mean, obviously, you're a passionate guy. You make me feel passionate about football just listening to you. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I wish I wish we had an hour more that we could just sit here and talk to you and hear old stories about stuff and, probe your mind a little bit more about, things going on in the league now. And, unfortunately, we can't. Hopefully, maybe we'll have you on again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to come on the show. You guys do a real nice job. It's great chemistry between the two of you. I would love to be on another episode, in the future, something you want to be on. I would love to come back on. But you guys asked a lot of good questions today, and thank you for the privilege of being on your show. It truly is a privilege.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Daniel Kelly. As always, we encourage you to reach out to us on Twitter at GrownMansPod and Instagram at GrownMansPodcast. And if you would like to throw a buck or two a month our way and support the show and become a grown man, you can do so on patreon.com/grownmanspodcast. And make sure you stick tuned after for the whiskey review.
Oh, yeah. Roll that music, Hattie.
Welcome into the show after the show, the whiskey review, which we didn't say anything of. It's a mystery whiskey.
Yeah.
We never told you before. We never told you during, but we're going to tell you now.
Yes.
It's a Japanese whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
FUYU is its name. It's a small batch, obviously a product of Japan. Just reading the label there. FUYU actually means winter in Japanese. It's a different Japanese whiskey, as this one is malted with grain and mashed corn. Some Japanese whiskeys use rice, obviously the malted grains and everything, but they use a corn, and then they rest it in an oak barrel. It says it's good for old fashions in Manhattan. So off the bottle, it says that its color is a dark amber. Its nose is floral and youthful aromas with caramel and spicy notes. Definitely get the floral and the youthful aromas. I don't know about those other things in the nose, but we'll get into that. Palate is a generous oak with cooked fruit finish with a hint of smokiness. So, what do you think about this whiskey? I think there's two unique things about it.
Okay.
But what do you think?
I am not a fan.
Big old hater.
I clearly am somebody who does not care about how much a whiskey costs. I just care about what it tastes like. I regularly try to find bargains that taste good. I don't know. How much did this one cost?
It's only $40.
$40.
Yep.
It's devoid of anything that I look for in a whiskey, is what I'll say.
All right.
There may be that this is a flavor palette that people find appealing.
It's very floral forward. It's very flowery and floral as opposed to some of the other tastes.
I guess maybe you could call that floral. I don't know. It tastes to me like a cheap Canadian whiskey.
Okay. It definitely has a taste of, it says right in its palate, youthful notes.
Yeah.
Which means it's probably a younger whiskey.
Right. Yeah. It's a whiskey.
Yep.
I can't. There's nothing. Here's the thing. There's nothing that I find redeeming about it.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't. It's just for me. I don't value smoothness that much. I value like a nice robust flavor. Layers, things like that. A nice nose, those things are all things that this doesn't really have a lot. This is definitely not a robust flavored whiskey.
Okay.
Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you say it's certainly more?
I'm a little bit more positive about it. I think in the way that I'm talking about the whiskey, but our scores, which we'll get into a little bit later, are pretty much the same.
Right.
I think this tastes like a young American whiskey. Like it has a lot of American, and I think that's from the corn mash that they use in it. I do like a couple things about it, but it's not redeeming enough to make the whiskey something I would ever buy again.
Yeah.
In the U.S., we don't get all the Japanese whiskeys over here. So usually, if you get a Japanese whiskey, it's usually pretty good.
Yep.
I think this is probably the worst one I've tried of the Japanese.
It's the worst Japanese I've ever tried as well.
If not the worst, the second worst.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember them all that I've tried, but this is probably my least favorite out of all the Japanese whiskeys that I've tried. I do like the floral notes, but there's just not a lot going on. I think the most redeeming thing is its aftertaste for me. It kind of tastes like if you had a vanilla bean ice cream and you're 10 minutes later and you still kind of have that like vanilla bean smoothness in the back of your tongue and throat. I get a little bit of that.
For me, it's more of like a walnut or a cashew.
Okay.
Or not cashew, a walnut or an almond. Right. The longer that I've sat here, and you mentioned that it's kind of got like a vanilla-y aftertaste. It's certainly not like a sweet vanilla aftertaste. It's more of like an aromatic vanilla-y. But for me, it kind of has turned into more of that nutty almond walnutty flavor. Like I feel like I just ate a walnut.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's run through our 5 categories that we do. Nose. What do you think? These are scored 1 to 10.
I'm gonna give this one a 4 on the nose.
Yeah.
It's just not for me. Not a lot going on. There's kind of like an acetone. I don't know. I've already explained my feelings on it. I'll just give you my scores on it.
Yeah, I gave it a 4 as well.
Yep.
I think it smells like a younger American whiskey. It's kind of got that like corn mash forward smell to it. It's almost borderline in the rye. I get like slight rye coming from it, but
I don't get the spiciness, like not the sharpness, but the spiciness of a rye.
It's not spicy.
Right.
It's just got that kind of like real corn forward flavor to it. So I give it a 4 as well.
Okay. Mouthfeel smoothness, I give it a 6.
Okay.
It's not like a super sharp. What's the proof on it?
40%.
80. Yeah, so 80 proof whiskey.
Yep.
I think for 80 proof, it's right there. It's not sharp for an 80. It is what it is supposed to be.
Yeah, I gave it a 4.5. I think it's a little rough at the beginning there. If you take a couple sips of it, it gets smoother though.
Yeah. Next up, flavor. I gave it a 3.5. I'm not getting a lot.
Yep. I gave it a 4. I think there's a little bit of the floral and a little bit of the vanilla that's in there. But obviously a 4 is not great. That's below average. There's a couple things that if you are super specific on a very florally kind of vanilla whiskey might be something.
Yeah. Balance and complexity, again, I gave it a 3.5. 3.5.
Yeah, I give it a 3.5 as well.
Yep.
There's not a super lot going on there. A little bit of spice that I got, but it doesn't really change or take you on a journey in any way.
Yep.
It's just kind of there and goes away.
Yep. Aftertaste, I gave it a 3. You kind of talked me into it. I might have bumped that up to a 3.5 and knocked down the balance and complexity to a 3. Just because the balance and complexity, I mean, I was trying not to kill it with my score, but
hey, it is what it is.
I think Aftertaste has a little bit more of a redeeming quality than the balance and complexity for me. But
yeah, the aftertaste I think is the thing that I like the most. I give it a 5.5 on the aftertaste. I think it takes you on a little bit of a journey. It gives you a little bit of the spiciness and the floral, and then kind of like I discussed with the vanilla bean at the end. It just kind of like lingers, and it's got like a creamy, smooth ending to it, which I kind of like.
Okay.
That's why I gave it a 5.5. Still not great, but the best thing, the thing that I enjoyed the most about the whiskey, and my final score out of 100 was a 43.
I gave it a 40. So, all right. So in next week, I already know what I'm bringing. I'm bringing the Ardbeg.
All right.
You said you wanted to try it, so
yeah. Next week, the Ardbeg is here.
Yep.
It was actually between this, a Highland, and an Isla for whiskeys that I was going to buy.
I just love Islas.
I should have bought the Highland.
I love
or
Islas.
the Isla.
I just love a smoky Scotch. I really do. I mean, like you're eating a mouthful of fire ash.
I'll I'll have to get a bottle of the Brooklotti.
Yeah.
And have you try that because I like that
Yep.
one. I had that at a local restaurant.
Yeah.
It's real good.
If it's
so
a
I'll have to
smoky
try that
Scotch,
one.
I'll love it.
It's not super smoky.
No.
For an Isla, it's not super smoky.
Yeah.
There's obviously smoke on it, but
Right.
it's not like Ardbeg or like a Lagavulin
Lagavulin,
or a Lefroy or something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you guys for listening this week.
Yeah.
And we will be back next week.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right.